makes my day. While Zach's here, so that just went down the tubes.
You ready? You say yes.
Yes, sir.
On. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Village of Ruidoso special meeting. It is a little bit after 9 o'clock. If you'll stand with me for a moment of silence, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendships among united cultures.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Can I have a roll call, please, ma'am?
Mayor Crawford,
Here?
Counselor Eby,
Here.
Counselor Letterman,
Here.
Counselor Salas,
Here.
Counselor Hooker,
Here.
Counselor Jackson,
Here.
Counselor Corey.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll start off with the agenda item number 1, ratification of lease agreement on real property located in Ruidoso Downs, Lincoln County, New Mexico.
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, we have Gino Zamora that'll be providing the information.
Okay. Morning, Gino Zamora.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. I'm trying to get my video and audio running. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you okay.
Okay, sounds great. You'll have to deal without my pretty face this morning.
Oh.
I wanted to provide you an update regarding the lease agreement for the property located in Ruidoso Downs, Lincoln County, more broadly known as racetrack property. As the mayor and village manager are aware, I was down in Ruidoso on the 10th and 11th to assist the village with the flooding that it was facing that particular week. During that time, it was very important to get a lease in place so that lease could be submitted as part of your emergency funding packets. And so I sat in person on that Thursday and Friday, worked with all the parties to get what we're calling a short form lease in place for 28 acres known as Tract J1. We've been discussing this property for a while, but all things needed to come together, especially with the flooding. So number 1 was the donation agreement from the trust that the council has previously approved receipt of the donation of the 28 acres, number 1. But that deed has been filed, and the city now owns that 28 acres. The second step was the importance of getting the lease in place so that anyone utilizing that new property owned by the village would be responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of their operations on that property. That's why the lease needs to be in place. But I do want to make sure that everyone is aware, because sometimes it can be said, oh, well, this lease is simply to benefit the track. And although the track is a major economic engine for the area, there's an important paragraph 7, that really articulates why this is an important property to own, to lease out, and to have the ability to improve the floodplain and waterway in that area. So, paragraph 7, and I'm just going to read it so it's on so that you're aware of it. Lessor shall have no obligation, lessor being the village, shall have no obligation to provide repairs and services under the lease. That's because the lessee has all of that authority. However, lessor retains the right to improve and maintain the premises for floodplain management and municipal asset and infrastructure protection purposes, including but not limited to regional wastewater treatment main interceptor line that is utilized by the Village of Ruidoso, City of Ruidoso Downs, and Mescalero Apache Reservation. If in lessor's sole discretion it deems floodplain management improvements, municipal asset and infrastructure protection measures and maintenance are necessary. So that particular area has a direct effect on the infrastructure that's needed by the village and other entities. And that's the importance of getting the land donation in place, the ability for the city the village to do floodplain maintenance, and then a lease so that a ground lease, because portions of the track are on this 28 acres, and therefore the track would be responsible for any of their improvements. With all of that, I do recommend, this was negotiated, it's been signed by all the parties. It needed to be signed on the 11th so that it could be submitted in the packet. But as the council knows, a lease agreement is a disposition of property. And so this is subject to council approval and ratification in this instance.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of Gino? Just for everyone's information, Gino's what kind of attorney are you, Gino? I mean, I don't want
I've been retained through the New Mexico Municipal League to provide general counsel services as it relates to flooding and floodplain management for the village.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No. Okay, so to state perfectly, the land was donated to the village. It worked with the state DOT to get financing to redo what was in the middle of the racetrack, and then the culverts, and everybody wanted to know why the culvert's so small. We had nothing to do with any of that. You have the Army Corps. Well, you're up here. You go ahead and tell everybody all the hoops.
Mayor and council, just a background on why the lease had to happen. So during last year's floods and fires, obviously after the burn scars, a significant amount of water was coming down off of the waterways. And so the track was obviously flooded out. Yes, it is a main economic engine, or one of the primary economic engines that brings foot traffic to the community, but that wasn't the main purpose in the donation of the land. There's communities, public safety, life on the other side of that, the community that's...
What do you mean by that?
So when the track collapsed, it basically created an earthen dam. Spaghetti Flats and any other communities that are downstream from those communities would negatively be impacted by a floodway. And so because of life safety, we worked with DOT, we worked with FEMA, we worked with several different entities to figure out the best way to do an emergency measure. So in most disasters, you have to fix what you have. You have to do an emergency measure repair. You can't fix something to a new standard until you get a qualifying project. And so what was allowed to be done there by the state through DOT was that they would replace the existing infrastructure, which are those culverts at the same size through design, to help protect those communities downstream, along with the wastewater treatment plant, along with the sewer line that runs under there, the interceptor line. And so a lot of that was the decision-making basis for FEMA to allow that to happen. The second piece that had to happen is that for infrastructure to receive future funds for assistance. So if we can fix it to a bigger and better structure, and we're talking about the floodplain, not the track. I just want to make sure everyone's clear. So, and I'm not saying the track is up and moving tomorrow. I'm just saying if they leave, that's still our land that we have to take care of the infrastructure downstream on, make sure that we're protecting the communities on. The only way that works is if it's public property. And so FEMA agreed that if a donation of the land was done to a government entity, then that government entity would be able to receive public funds in the future to be able to fix that infrastructure. And so that land was then donated to the village of Ruidoso with the idea that if there was damage in the future, which we understood could happen because of the burn scars and what we call cascading events, that opportunity would exist to continue to have solid infrastructure rather than to run into a situation where infrastructure would be deteriorating and we'd put several lives in danger as well as infrastructure in a position where it could be destroyed more quickly. And so that's why that donation was done. A lease then followed afterwards as to someone would have to maintain that land that is within the floodway. And since it landed on tract property, the lease was done in that manner. But outside of that, it's mainly to make sure we qualify for federal funds in the future to make sure that we can replace it and put in the proper infrastructure.
Mayor and council, just a few more notes on that, along with the interceptor line, which Gino explained, the entities that utilize the interceptor line is we had manholes on that property also that were raised and armored in that area also. That was part of the project that we had on the floodplain area there. So we're protecting our assets and, as Mike's Spaghetti Flats, the wastewater treatment plant along the Rio Ruidoso.
Can I have?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Michael, so it was designed in the infield for holding, I want to say holding tanks for the water so that the surge wouldn't be so bad going to Spaghetti Flats and down the river.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. So the way that it's technically supposed to work is water comes in. At the end of the day, FEMA is not, I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but their concern is more the infrastructure, not the private property that exists on top of it. So their assumption is that there will be destruction to private property, but the infrastructure is what matters. So when the water comes through, it filters through those culverts that they
Right.
put in place. The water runs down the channel. At the end of the channel, before the next culvert, there's a backup channel where that water builds and fills a pond. It's a retention pond, or detention pond, excuse me, not a retention. It won't retain water. It only detains water until it starts to drain again and subsides and then releases the water back into the channel. It's supposed to stop a massive amount of water from breaching, causing the same thing that happened last year where the track collapsed, and then destroying other properties and flooding out. Now, obviously, on last Tuesday, or on the flooding that we received, it was a significant amount of water. It was, they've adjusted the numbers. It was 3.25 inches that they tracked, which makes it a 50-year flood amount, but the water amount was a 500-year flood amount that they're pushing. So it did its job for the most part in stopping that water, and it did its job in the sense of not allowing the communities downstream to be completely underwater, and it didn't destroy the interceptor line, and it didn't destroy the other assets that we have downstream.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Clarification, as I recall, we're doing this versus the city of Ruidoso Downs primarily because of funding resources.
Yes, we had our budget already turned in. It had already been approved. Our audits came back. They were really good, so to enable to be a grant awarded and ran through, need to be through a municipality or the county. And you guys, when I brought it to y'all to do it, you guys stepped up, and so they made us the ownership of the property. But we didn't pay for the Miller Trust Fund property. The grants that we received were for the seeding and for the fence that went around it.
That's correct.
And the rest of it was paid for by, I think it came through DOT.
Yes, and
Their
Department of
engineers.
Finance and Administration also.
Yeah, DFA. And then, what was the other part of that? Then we just wanted to maintenance on it so that whoever's
sir.
operating that in the future, and if there's nobody out there operating the track, it's our baby.
Yes, sir.
We have to mow the yard, mow the grass, we have to keep the culverts clean, and that's the whole purpose behind that.
And just to clarify your statement, Mayor, the DOT did fund, I believe the total project came out to about $16 million for the emergency work. That is actually refundable funds that they are submitting as a project to FEMA that pays that project back for the emergency work. So there was really no state or local funds that were spent on that. Those are all reimbursable funds for an emergency disaster.
And so did you engineer that?
No, sir.
Well, it wasn't me either. Greg? No. So who engineered it?
So there was a combination of DOT engineers, private consultants that had to follow FEMA requirements in the design and construction.
And no rise permit?
No rise
certificate?
permit had to be done in order for that work to be completed.
So it came through the Office of State Engineer, came from DOT, the Army Corps was involved, NRCS, at FEMA, which didn't make this project perfect. It makes it complicated.
Yes, sir.
And so, what about the track repairs for the track itself?
No, so anything that's private, either they have to do that on their own out of pocket, or if they work through SBA on what that looks like, but there aren't any funds that go directly to any private property owners as part of a disaster for businesses outside of SBA.
Okay, so similar measures are what's needed on tribal land, on federal land, on all this stuff where actually the rain is hitting on the burn scars and where all this starts.
Yes, sir. And so actively, we're requesting, after this federal declaration, we're asking for different requests on mitigation and remediation on how to stop those items, but we haven't been given funds for those projects yet. We haven't had approval for those projects yet. From the last disaster, and I know I'm getting off topic on the item.
Well, no, I'm
so-
asking you
Yes,
because
sir.
we got a lot of folks, World Wide Web and all,
Yes, sir.
that want to understand why we did what we did, and it's because the land was given to us free. We were able to get to it, but all this other stuff, we can't even get to because it's tribal land, it's state, it's
Yes, sir.
federal land, and we don't have permission.
We don't
nor the
have
funding.
permission. We are working with other entities to try and figure out future mitigation and remediation projects. And we are placing those and submitting them to the federal government for review and approval, but we have not received those yet. So we don't have any funds at all related to those types of projects at this point. The only things that we have submitted that have been approved that we're starting to work on, that now we're starting the engineering process on, are the damages from last year. So culvert replacement, there's been questions as to, well, why can't we fix our culverts today or tomorrow? Those were all packages that were submitted with roads, they were submitted with impacts to culverts, they were submitted with impacts to water lines and sewer lines. Again, we're allowed to do emergency repairs, but even those repairs that we did 3 days ago, just as an example, we found 4 pipes sticking up in the ground from this last minor flood yesterday. And so those are issues that we're dealing with. We are putting a lot of emergency work, because that's what we're allowed to do, fixes into the ground. But until those projects are officially approved, which they barely recently have been, they still have to go to engineering. Engineering still has to be done, then a design has to be completed. And once the design is completed on the permanent work, then we can start construction. So more than likely, we may not see some of that happen till middle of next year in reality, because there is a federal requirement that we have to follow. We have to go out for a federal bid process. That has to have specific requirements in the procurement laws on how we follow that federal bid process. We have to make sure that we're following the designs and the requirements that the federal government places on those projects. So those have to go through approval. Once they get approved and once that design is approved, then we can go out to bid for construction.
And have you heard any guess numbers on what that looks like?
From a time frame perspective or amount?
Money-wise?
So FEMA initially said that everything should cost right around $29 million to actually do. We believe that it's closer to about 150 million, but the good part about the project that we are in, it's not what they have approved from a budget perspective, that's just an estimate. We're actually on actuals. So what we have to do is we submit the actuals to the federal government reconciles those actuals and then reimburses based on that.
Because we've already spent over $70 million. But we've spent, just since the event Tuesday, over $10 million has been spent on desilting, trying to declutter the bridges and all that. The point I'm making is all of this is one big thing that we've been working on. The buyback program goes into this too. That we still don't have a buyout program.
No, sir.
And we didn't have to buy the property at the Miller Trust, but there's property all along the Rio Ruidoso, which is now not going to be able to be rebuilt because it's in the floodplain.
We do have the floodway and the floodplain. What we are strongly asking individuals to do, we've had, and just to clarify some of the items that are out there right now, we do have teams that have gone out that have done what we call damage assessments from FEMA side. So FEMA has 4 categories that exist. It's what they call totaled, major, minor, or affected. That doesn't mean that we're telling you your house is totaled or your business is totaled. It doesn't mean that it's that we're coming in and we're going to condemn the property or close it. We've had teams that are out there handing out what are, unfortunately, we had a lot of red colored tags. So it is a red colored tag that goes out, but it's a safety structure notice. We have given those to individuals, like letting people know that their structures are not safe. As part of that team, we also have a mental health and a spiritual component. We also have the state DRC case manager that's along with them, and they are basically out there trying to let people know what is available. Now, since we've received our federal declaration yesterday, what that means is there is individual assistance that will be available for homeowners. On Friday, a new DRC should pop up. We'll have the location finalized with the FEMA entities after, hopefully after today or tomorrow. The state DRC has actually moved to ENMU, and so there's resources that are there. SBA will be hitting the ground on Friday as well. But if you are in a floodway or floodplain, as you just mentioned, what we are asking residents to do, the village can't do this. We are not doing assessments. We did that initial windshield assessment to give numbers to FEMA to show them the damage. What a homeowner has to do or a property owner has to do is they can go to a registered licensed contractor and they will get a quote on how much it will cost to bring them back to their existing footprint. Now, this is where it sounds crazy. You cannot make any improvements on your property if you're in the floodway. Unfortunately, you are not allowed by federal floodplain guidelines which we had to adopt into our local ordinance to make protective measures in that area in a floodway because there's no new construction that's allowed. This existing floodway was established in 2014. And so anyone that was in there prior to 2014.
What's a floodway?
The floodway is the channel of the river or that area that's identified as the channel of the river by FEMA flood maps. They came out and said, this is the floodway.
And a floodplain?
Floodplain is the highest level of water that it will get to the height and spread widthwise that you will be impacted by a 100-year flood rain event. And so if you are in those 2 areas, you have to follow 2 requirements. So again, the substantial damage process is what we are asking people to do. Substantial damage is when you get your contractor, you ask them to say, how much will it cost me to get back to where we were at? And then you can get an estimate of your property value. 2 ways are acceptable. You either go and you get the tax assessor's value of your property, Or if you have an appraisal from the last 4 years that have been done, 5 years, you are allowed to use that value. Obviously, those two values are significantly different, but depending on the estimate and depending on the decision that property owner makes, if you were in the floodway and you were below 50% damage, so for example, I'm just making up numbers, if you have a $600,000 property value of structure, not including land, just the structure itself, if you have a $600,000 value and your contractor comes back and says, and we'll say that that was an appraisal value, and you have a $600,000 value and your contractor says it'll cost you $200,000 to come back to where you were at, you were under the 50% threshold. However, the percentage that you have sticks with you for the next 10 years. So if there is a reoccurring event, which is what we're calling cascading events, if there is an event that damages your property again, and it is over 50%, the floodplain guidelines say you cannot rebuild if it's damaged. And even if you only sustained 5% of damage, or 7%, and that 7% puts you over the 50, your property has to come down. Now, if you were over.
When you say has, who makes you do that?
That is the FEMA requirements for floodplain guidance.
Who gives FEMA the authority to do all that? I'm just curious.
When we adopt federal floodplain requirements for federal flood insurance, that's a portion of the grant assurances that we adopt as a community. We also adopt that as part of our floodplain ordinance. So when we say no new construction in the floodway, it is adopted as part of the floodplain guidance, so we can continue receiving flood insurance for the community, as well as other federal grants that exist on the federal level.
So we paid for a new floodplain and floodway work through grants and whatnot. We had Cobb Finley do that.
Yes, sir.
And this council adopted, it went to the FEMA because they said it'd be 3 to 5 years before they could do that.
Yes, sir.
So where are they at with that?
So on the floodway maps, we were told at the federal level that we're not on the mapping process for an additional 3 to 5 years. So what this council did and gave direction on is we went out and did a new floodplain map. Those floodplain maps were for Highway 70, and they were for the Rio Ruidoso and the waterways that were inclusive of those. And so that came back in March. There was another one in May that was updated for 70. We are doing one more for Perk Canyon because a floodway does not exist in that area, but we realized that there was a dormant waterway there. And since then, we have moved to identify that as a floodplain area as well. Those have all been adopted, minus Perk Canyon. And what that shows is basically, this is the new area that will be impacted if rain comes during one of these events, a 100-year event. And so what we did see in the last flood is that most of those floodplain areas, and even some outside of them, were impacted by flood waters. We understand that there was significant feedback prior to the flood that people didn't believe they were in those floodplains or would be impacted by floods. However, I think now that data has kind of been verified to some degree, and those are the things that were adopted.
My eyes are glazing over.
Sorry, Mayor.
But I understand it, there's still a lot to be done.
Yes, sir.
But the whole thing is going to have to be redone.
Yes, sir.
When I say the whole thing, the Rio Ruidoso, we're having to work with the state and the feds on what they're going to do also on tribal land, because we do see a lot of trucks, big trucks coming out of tribe through Upper Canyon hauling debris now.
Yes, sir.
Which is new, that's great. And so, but the Miller Trust deal was the quickest one that happened, and that still took months.
Yes, sir.
So that was the low-hanging fruit that we were able to take advantage of to get things started. So,
Yes, sir.
does anybody else have any
And
questions?
Mayor?
Thank you for that.
Mayor, I move approval of the ratification of lease agreement on real property located in Ruidoso Downs, Lincoln County, New Mexico.
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please, ma'am.
Counselor Corey?
Aye.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Counselor Hooker?
Aye.
Counselor Solis?
Aye.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Eby?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Discussion and possible action on amendment to task order number 3 with Souder Miller and Associates for preliminary and final design for tank rehabilitation phase 2 ITB number 2022-00 SMA in the amount of $91,857.68, including New Mexico GRT. Hello, Randy.
Good morning, Mayor, council members.
Morning.
This is basically to complete the preliminary and final design of Phase 2 for the part of the restoration project. So what they're basically going to do is they're going to demo the 2 backwash tanks, and they're going to come in and they're going to put in a new hydromatic tank inside of Plant 1, what's left of it.
And what does that mean?
That means it's just like a pressure tank. So it'll come in and it'll keep the pressure and it'll allow the pumps not to cavitate and stuff, so.
Adam, you got something to add? Okay. So, and when you're talking about these backwash tanks, just for everyone's edification, where are those located?
You know where Plant 1 at the end of,
Plant 1 is all the way in Upper Canyon.
Yeah,
That got
it's-
taken out in this last flood.
Yeah, the front or the back part of the building got wiped out, but the part that has the pumps and everything is still intact.
Okay.
So, yeah, and the tanks are located right up on the hill, right across from the Plant 1.
And that's what feeds.
Yes, sir, Mayor, Council. So along with what Randy's saying is he got this design in progress. And now we're seeing why. This, we have this left into the hillside with the tanks up there. And that now that Plant 1 is destroyed, except for a little portion of it, the design is going to be actually to feed the water the way I have it now from Black Forest in a sense, but we'll still take Alto water and feed up for fire protection. So there'll be a check valve. So when it's kind of like we have with the hospital, when there's fire flows or big flows, Black Forest will pick up where the plant can produce.
Randy, you started this before the flood. I mean,
Correct.
you
Yes,
were
sir.
trying to be proactive, and
Yeah,
now we're being
and-
reactive.
And then the other thing, like Adam had talked about, is the backwash tank. Before, we had a real hard time getting up to the tanks. And then a lot of it, we would have had to spend a lot more money retrofitting and putting in a retaining wall, and it was just a real nightmare to get up there. We couldn't even hardly get the tank divers up there, to inspect the tanks. So this will eliminate that, that issue, and we would have had to do a lot of work on the road getting up to the tanks also.
So we're going to eliminate the tanks totally.
Are we going to take them down?
Yes, that's part of the design phase of this. And the other thing is they're going to relocate the hydrants to the other side of
The other
street.
side. Are you talking about the ones up Flume Canyon or the ones
The
where?
ones on Main Road, so
Main
you have
Road?
the high pressure and low pressure. So right now, the hydrants are actually on the low pressure line, and they'll be transitioned to the high pressure line, so you can feed it both ways, and we have the fire hose.
Okay, and this is with Souder Miller, and Associates, the engineering company.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the duration is like 4 months and 7 days for,
And so you're able to move water around, all the way around because of the interconnects and all the other stuff that's been
Yes, sir.
done?
And the way, like the way we did it this time after the floods is you have Alto water feeding up Ponderosa Heights through Brady Canyon, Upper Canyon, and then it went to Plant 1. Plant 1 then pumped that water up to the backwash tanks and fed down the higher pressure to Black Forest. Well, after last year's floods, I turned the water around from Grindstone and fed Black Forest with that, so we'd eliminate a section to be out of water if something did wash out. During this year's flood, I actually opened that valve and closed off the tanks, being that we could not feed the tanks, and fed lower pressure from Grindstone to the backwash tanks, and we're still using Alto water up that way also.
Excellent. Congratulations on not losing pressure and not having any contamination, so we appreciate that.
It is good. What size is the tank?
The new tank they're putting in?
Yes.
It'll be a smaller tank. I think it's gonna be,
50?
no, I don't even think it's
Even
gonna be that
smaller?
big. It's just gonna be a pneumatic tank, basically to hold pressure, because we have the volume, we just need the pressure there.
Right.
So it'll be, I can't remember the exact size.
Similar to the one that we used to have on Coconino before it burned up? That little smaller
That's,
tank there that was for pressure to pump the water up?
north tank, I think is.
No, it was just for that little area in Coconino. Just-
Okay.
We couldn't get water pressure there, we couldn't whatever, and this was a small tank.
It'd be similar to
So
that.
you're not, remember it?
Gonna be real big.
Okay.
Basically it'd be like a pressure tank for your house.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger.
That's why this one
And
was.
it's just gonna feed pressure to it, but then the check valve that we have at the isolation valve I have in Black Forest will, it won't let the water feed to Black Forest, but when we drop pressure on the Upper Canyon side, that check valve will open up and serve pressure to that area.
Okay.
So we'll have two ways to feed that area at all times.
So is that tank going to be, are we going to build around it? Water plant, plant one?
That was the idea. Now with the flooding and stuff, and now it took out the building, we're working with Sauter Miller to make sure that we can still put it in that building, yes.
Okay.
Depending on the size, it might still fit in that front part where we have the two pumps, so.
Okay.
And that's probably part of the design that they'll come up with, so.
Okay.
Of course, things changed a little bit since the flood event, so.
Yeah. And we had a trash rack that's right on the reservation line, that, right at the line that was in front of that building, and it got pretty much wiped out too. They've been trying to clear it for over 2 weeks now. So it did its job, it needed more help.
Yes, sir.
So, anybody else have any discussions? Questions? Roll call, please, ma'am.
Yeah, we need
Oh, we'll
to-
get a motion.
Mr. Mayor, move to approve amendment to task order number 3 with Souter Miller and Associates for preliminary and final design services for tank rehabilitation Phase 2, invitation to bid number 2022, double lot SMA 03, in the amount of $91,857.68, including New Mexico GRT.
Second.
What? We have a first and a second that fast? You guys are on board
We're over here on the 18.
on the 18. Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Counselor Jackson,
Aye.
Counselor Hooker,
Aye.
Counselor Corey,
Aye.
Counselor Solis,
Aye.
Counselor Letterman.
Aye.
Counselor Eby.
Usually they're wanting to beat you up on where you got the money.
It's funded by, water trust funding, so.
Water Trust Fund Board, exactly. So we applied for a grant and received it. Good job. I don't see our guy that was sitting here a while ago that sits on that board, but I was gonna say thank you. So the Water Trust Board does a lot of good stuff for us. Thank you. Okay, next is item number 3, discussion and possible action on task order number 2024-003P-07 with Bohannon Houston, Inc. for restoration and improvements to various roads and drainage in Upper Canyon and Ponderosa Heights subdivisions in the amount of $362,947.43, including New Mexico GRT.
Mayor, council, so we have reached out to Bohannon Houston. They're our roadway engineers and drainage engineers for the short and long term, for some of the crossings and like Burt Canyon, Maple, Brady Canyon, Upper Canyon. As you know, this last year, we went and put culverts back in so people have access to the driveways and roadways. Well, they're gonna keep washing out. So we're being reactive. This is in the long term to be proactive, to get a design for these culverts not to wash out.
Mayor and council, also, we have Logan Brandenburg with Bohannon Houston online, if anyone has questions for him, and this is part of the FEMA funds, that we received the loan from the state. This funding will be dedicated towards that. And if you have any questions for Logan, he's ready.
Morning, council.
This was FEMA funds from last year, right?
Yes, this is for the original, the 4652, the disaster from last year.
So it was the 100 million.
4795, I'm sorry.
The 100
Yes.
million that legislative got in HB1 that went out, that 10 went to the tribe, 10 went to MNRD, 10 went to Homeland Security.
Yes.
And then 70 was split up between us and the county. We were funded $22 million that we hadn't been able to draw from until this week because those projects were finally obligated by FEMA. So that's why we're able to do this today.
As a
That's correct.
loan, it actually was granted to us as a loan.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to go through all the hoops to make sure we can have them.
That was the language, that it's a loan
Yeah.
unless we get approval.
And Mayor and Council, if anyone has any questions for Logan, and I believe, is that Kurt also with him there, or is that?
Yes. Good
Okay.
morning.
Anybody have any questions for?
No?
Okay.
Well, I think we're good, Logan. Thank you for attending. Yes, sir.
I do have a question for Adam. I can't remember our map overlapping funding projects. Does any of these overlap those?
None of the MAP project, Counselor Salas, none of the MAP projects are
Just
co-op projects.
remember something on Ponderosa, and that's where.
The next map we have is for Flume Canyon up in that area, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Tell them what MAP means,
Municipal Arterial Project,
project. Off the streets and highways comes from DOT.
yes, sir.
And so that's where we get funding, partial funding to do paving. We were actually in the process of paving Brady Canyon
Yes.
when this event happened on that Tuesday. Okay.
I'll make a
All right.
motion.
Make a motion, please.
I move that we accept task order number 2024-003P-07 with Bohannon Houston, Inc. for restoration improvements to various roads and drainage in the Upper Canyon and Ponderosa Heights subdivisions in the amount of $362,947.43, including New Mexico GRT.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call, please, ma'am.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Eby?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Hooker?
Aye.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Counselor Corey?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 4, discussion and possible action on proposal from Rymark Construction, Inc. Yeah, I don't think you just better stick around. You gonna
That's
get-
your chair, Adam.
You gonna get Mr. Chavez up here? Okay. Discussion possible action on proposal from Rymark Construction, Inc. for the McDaniel Road repairs utilizing New Mexico GSD statewide price agreement number 30-5-23-3-70 in the amount of $324,099.73, including New Mexico GRT.
So Adam, a question, are we re-engineering this or building it back the way it was?
No, this is not gonna be back the way it was, and I'll have MP kind of explain the way we
Okay.
had talked about it. We
Thank
kind of field engineered it. Take Bohannon out there and look at it and, kind of agree with us as a temporary, to put a bridge in, it's gonna cost millions. We're looking at short-term and long-term, so to get people access, and I'll let MP kind of explain what we had to come up with.
So we decided to put in a low water crossing there. We're gonna put in 4-foot round smash culverts so we can get if the river does go over it, it will go over and stay in the channel. It's basically what we're
So
doing.
if it gets clogged, it just goes over the top?
Yes, it'll be at a slant, so everything will be concreted in, the culverts, the 4 culverts will be concreted in at a slant on each side. Kind of like the track was, how they had the concrete there.
Yeah.
So if you do get debris, the debris does not get caught up in the culverts and clog it up, it will go over, and then after the flood event, we can go just knock the debris off the bridge.
And Mr. Chavez, are the culverts, are they concrete, are they steel?
No, there'll be corrugated steel culverts, 12
Okay.
gauge, and there'll be 4 of them placed in there. And like Adam was saying, there'll be a ramp on the upstream side, and there'll be a ramp on the downstream side, and all that will be concreted in. The culverts will actually be concreted in also, so they're gonna be moving. If the water moves them, then
Yeah.
we need an arc.
Similar to what you did on Paradise, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Very
it's
similar.
all concreted on the,
Except that's kind of even.
right,
A low water crossing, you would actually.
Go down.
Go
The
down
approach
some.
will be down, and then the coming out would be an uphill, so.
also known as a low water
Low
crossing.
water crossing.
So Adam, once approved, what's the timeline?
So once approved, MP will order the culverts, and we can get started here pretty quick. You wanna give a timeline on that?
I talked to the people that make the smash culverts, and they said probably 3 weeks before I can receive the culverts to
material.
install them. Yes, sir.
So where are we getting the money for this one?
Mayor and council, I've applied for a grant through the Department of Finance and Administration. It's waiting on the grant agreement, so we're committed to the funding from the state.
So it seems we're spending $320-something thousand on a temporary.
Yes,
Yeah, and used to you could have bought a whole bridge for that.
absolutely.
And now then the estimates that and this is bridges we've been trying to get replaced for years.
We're looking, Mayor, council, close to 3 million for redoing the bridge there on McDaniels, that small of structure.
Yep.
That's just the construction, that's not the engineering.
So when we say temporary,
When we get the final obligation and design on the permanent bridge, then it'll come out, but temporary could be
years.
We're still waiting on temporary from.
Yeah, 2008.
2008.
2008, we're on.
Yes.
And how many times has this been rebuilt?
Chavez has bought some heavy equipment from the money he's made off this puppy.
He's done it twice and I've
I've
done it
rebuilt
once.
it twice, and I think you've rebuilt it once,
Yep.
right?
That's in the last 3 years.
Okay. Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
Mr. Mayor, move to approve proposal from Rymark Construction, Inc. for McDaniel Road repairs utilizing New Mexico GSD statewide price agreement number 35-23 70 in the amount of $324,099.73, including New Mexico GRT.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, ma'am.
Counselor Jackson,
Aye.
Counselor Corey,
Aye.
Counselor Hooker,
Aye.
Counselor Solis,
Aye.
Counselor Letterman.
Aye.
Counselor Eby.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good work, Ron. I mean, it's less than 2 weeks and you got all that stuff out of DFA and we're now going out for the equipment. That's pretty good. Item number 5, discussion and possible action on resolution 2025-23, a resolution approving emergency procurement for an emergency declaration in the village of Ruidoso.
Mayor and council, wanted Judy, we're just going to present this. We wanted to just list all our emergency procurement that we've been doing since July the 8th, and just wanted to have it memorialized and be able to show you what vendors we're using, and also on some of these projects. On the sewer side, like ProPipe, also applied for some funding for that through DFA and should be getting the grant agreement on that also. That was like 1.5 million, so we're just keep on working. We've been with the crews, but I'll have Judy just explain some of this also.
Hello, Judy.
Hi, Mayor and councilors. As you know, an emergency procurement is already allotted or allowed in our policy. What we have to do is get an estimate. We don't go through normal procurement. We get an estimate or a proposal from the contractor, and then we advertise it on our website, saying that we are going to do work with this contractor for X amount of dollars, and that's their point to tell us whether or not they could do the same work. We have to post that within 3 days of beginning with the contractor. We've never had anybody come back on an emergency procurement and said, I can also do that work, or anything that would halt the work currently being done for us to stop and go through a procurement. Because as you know, a procurement can take a month or two depending on what type of services or goods you're purchasing. So this was just a way through state statute that we can, in an emergency situation, get some contractors working to help protect life and well-being and infrastructure assets. So since the flood, we have done a few procurements to try to get going some of the emergency repairs, waiting for the time that we do get a declaration and then get a project worksheet obligated for the project and then get it engineered. So, you know, temporary work is happening now, but that's not going to be the permanent work. Permanent work is still going to be out 18 months or even longer. So these are just quick fixes and a tool that allows us within municipal statutes to get the work done and help protect our constituents.
So Judy, are we essentially paying out of the general fund with the idea that we'll get reimbursed?
So Councilor Corey, Mayor, until we get a presidential declaration saying that you're going to get federal funding, the monies are coming out of the general fund. As soon as we get the presidential declaration, then it kind of changes because then now we're going to get a grant from the feds. Now that's not 100% total cost. So we will have a portion, and it will probably be about 12% of our share of the total cost. As you recall, on the disaster, or the infamous, I guess I should say 1783, Dolly, our share of that cost was 8% because the state decided to take on additional 4 of our percentage ownership. So now that we have a declaration, we'll start getting monies obligated, and so the drain on the general fund will be replaced by a grant coming from feds and state.
In ballpark, what's the level of our cash currently?
At the end of June, in the general fund, we had 9 million.
Okay, so we've got some.
Yes, we have some wiggle room. What has helped us too is the DFA loan, the 22 million upfront for the South Fork disaster. So that kind of has taken off the pressure off the general fund, because there's no way that we could front the
Sure.
whatever millions of dollars that those projects are going to need. And as you know, the reimbursement process is not very fast. We started the reimbursement process on both bridges and the sewer line, I want to say 6 months ago. And that was us grabbing all our invoices, reconciling it to all our quarterly reports, getting the canceled checks, getting all our procurements, and getting it up to the state. And we still haven't seen any money for that yet,
3.5 million minimum.
From last year,
from 2008.
2008,
Yeah,
okay.
and then we've got money from 2000, last year, 24. We did finally get 2022 money off the McBride. Then we finally get the last 3 million or 2 million, 2.8.
McBride, we got the monies from McBride, but we haven't gotten anything from South
So this is
Florida.
like your house gets burned down and your insurance company says, we're gonna rebuild it. Go ahead and get started. So you get with the contractor comes, builds it. He says, homeowner, I need my paycheck. So you write him a check and you're calling your insurance company and they say, it's coming. And so he comes and takes another draw. You have to come up with the money while your insurance company's telling you it's coming. So that's what we're dealing with.
And Mayor and Council, just a quick comment to hopefully alleviate some of the financial issues on the emergency side. Last night, after we met with FEMA delegation from yesterday, there was a submission of an application. We'll have a call today. It's a query call, but that amount is for an immediate $4 million. Judy and team had put together a quick budget of what our impacts were going to be projected for the next month. So that was submitted. We are hoping, based on discussions from yesterday, that that money will be here within the next week to be able to address our immediate concerns for the operation of these cascading events, which are impacted. So that should alleviate some of those operational costs as well.
And Mayor and Council, again, submitted an application to the Department of Finance for some, like ProPipe. That's excess of $684,000.
$654,270.
That we should be get reimbursed from the state on that.
We
So-
went in and started that 2
Yes.
weeks ago.
Yeah,
Right after this event.
They were good with that. They said just get started on it. We can always submit a notice of obligation after the grant agreement's been executed, so we're moving forward.
And that was through emergency procurement.
Yes.
And that process with DFA on a DFA grant, we can get the money within a week.
Yeah, they're quick.
They're quick, if you have all your ducks in a row.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Great.
doing that.
thanks for the
I got pretty
ducks.
good at that,
Yeah,
so.
You're doing an awesome job. Thank you.
Do we have an estimate of the other vendors, what it's gonna, or is it gonna be as needed services? I mean, we got the 654,000 through the grant. What are some of these other sewer line repairs and?
You have no idea.
So
So
we
that's-
don't have an idea. We are creating an immediate estimate. We believe there could be damage of emergency funds anywhere ranging between $5 to $15 million of emergency work needed on the sewer system alone, just to try and put that emergency work back in order.
Okay.
So this covers we're cammering the sewer line that we just finished after working on it for however many years, the hammering and all of
20
that.
years.
Yeah.
And just got it finished, I don't know, maybe a year?
Yeah.
Last May.
Last year, 24.
Yeah, before this one, so, and most of we have a lot of it in Upper Canyon that's all destroyed, so, Adam and his crew, we were able to get ProPipe out there started a week ago or 10 days ago. Then we've got emergency sewer main point repairs for the interceptor line, which is the main line that takes waste from all over the village, the end of the Mountain Gods, Mescalero, and then Ruidoso Downs. the water line repairs, emergency water and sewer line repairs. These are different contractors that we're getting set up with so that they can get it done. MP Chavez, Jack Johnson, J&H Services, which is redoing the CDBG-RR, or it's just, what is that process that they're doing at Country Club?
Water Trust Board.
Water
Yes,
Trust
sir.
Board money,
Yep.
yeah.
We still haven't seen the CDBG-DR funding yet. That's hopefully coming in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, and then we just got a check today from one of our insurance carriers on a bunch of damage at the wastewater treatment plant, mainly to the headworks. That when we had the sewer lines, the mains were popped off, the lids that weigh a lot, that you can't even pick them up, they're just gone. We don't even know where a lot of them are at. The river scoured those so much that usually they're at ground level. Now they're sticking out of the ground 5, 6, 7, 8 feet. They got snapped off. In that went mud, dirt, sewer, rock that Adam and his guys have been trying to get out. And so we've had to hire a specialized company to come in because that stuff turns into concrete. Most of y'all know that. And to get that out of the sewer, that's why we were having to send Vector trucks all up and down the sewer to our different lift stations, which we had, how many wiped out? 4 or 6? 5? 4? 4. And so we're having to send out a Vector truck, which is a big shop vac on a truck that costs $1.5 million that takes us about a year to get. But we've got 2 of them, and then the Downs has one that we use, and we've called other engineering companies that we can use to pump that out, haul it to the wastewater treatment plant, so that we're not trying to infect or whatever the river. So a lot of work, good, and so we're so happy that we finally got the presidential declaration. Because now I feel a lot better knowing that we're going to get this all paid back. Because $9 million doesn't go as far as it used to.
Right.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Motion, please.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-23, a resolution approving emergency procurement for an emergency declaration in the village of Ruidoso.
Second.
No discussion. Roll call, please, ma'am.
Counselor Hooker.
Aye.
Counselor Jackson.
Aye.
Counselor Corey.
Aye.
Counselor Salas.
Aye.
Counselor Letterman.
Aye.
Counselor Eby.
Okay, item number 6. Thank you, Judy.
Judy may need you for this next one.
Update on monsoon season 2025 disaster declaration.
Mayor and council, just wanted to give an update. We did receive the federal declaration, but also if Judy has any numbers on what we have expended to date. Do you have that, Judy?
So we haven't expended, like wrote the check, but we have open POs, and I believe it was like 3 million going, but that's just,
2 weeks.
yeah, that's just the EOC expenses. That doesn't have anything to do with the damage that's out there. That's just for us operating the EOC and doing some small things like McDaniel, the bridge, and the Pro Pipe. Out there, we don't have any clue what.
And Judy and I will be working, Mayor and Council, with Department of Homeland Security for all the meals at the EOC. We talked to her yesterday. We'll be submitting a reimbursement for that. They're going to pay 100% of that also.
Okay, we have a lot of people coming in from around the country.
Yes, exactly.
In the state that are working up here. Every time that there's a watch that goes out, the EOC, you get notified on Slack. And if you're on and you're in the billing department, but you're also in the phone bank department at the EOC, you're called to go in whatever time it is. And then when the warning starts happening, then everybody starts tracking from the USGS gauges, cameras that we've put in place, different points along the river, the flooding patterns, to let people know, so that we're sending out the IPAWS alerts and the reverse 911. Greg goes down to the radio station and goes live so people can tune in to
Absolutely.
get a drop by drop.
Yes, sir.
Because we have an embedded meteorologist that's watching everything with the National Weather Service. So it's pretty impressive what you guys do down there. And that is mostly what we've been spending money on, getting all that to be prepared to deploy people in the extra capacity at their job. So I appreciate any employees that are listening that aren't working. Dave, I'm not talking about you because you got such a workload. But everybody doing extra, I appreciate it because, you know, a lot of jobs, a lot of people wouldn't be doing it. So I think our employees big time. Any other questions for that? How many homes were in this last little big gas flood, how many homes were taken out?
So after we did our initial assessments, there was about 409 homes that were impacted. I believe the numbers that we have right now are 145 were destroyed, 187, and don't quote me on those, I'll pull up the data, were actually at significant damage. There was about 45 that were at minor damage and about 22 that were affected in some way, shape, or form. And so that math may not add up, but those are the numbers I remember at different times. But we did have about 409, 410 homes that have been impacted. Of those homes, 240 of those homes are in the floodway. So a large majority of them were impacted. Again, from earlier, we are asking residents and property owners, please go through the substantial damage process. Call the number that we have online or work with our community development department, Alex's team, so that we can make sure that we're getting you the required letter of substantial damage so that you can continue moving forward on whether it's rebuilding or looking at any other resources that are available for what has to happen moving forward.
Okay. Do you have anything else? Sure. Any questions? Okay, well, we appreciate the update. And now I'll move into item number 7, closed session. Can I get a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we move into closed session for discussion of limited personnel matters citing 1015-1H2, NMSA 1978. Further discussion subject to the attorney-client privilege pertaining to threatened or pending litigation in which the Village of Ruidoso is or may become a participant, citing 1015-1H7 MSA 1978. And finally, discussion of the purchase, acquisition, and/or disposal of real property and/or water rights by the Village of Ruidoso, citing 1015-1H8 MSA 1978. Any action taken as a result of the closed session will be brought back into open session, and I so move.
Second.
Roll call.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Counselor Hooker?
Aye.
Counselor Corey?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Letterman? Aye. Counselor Eby?
Aye. Good, thank you. We're going to go to the executive room and we'll be back hopefully shortly.
Anita, how bad was your house? I'm so sorry. Yeah. It's never in a million years what I thought it. I know. I know. I'm sorry. Andrew, my computer won't, said it ran into a problem. It totally, I couldn't use it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Do you need all my stuff?
No, it's okay. And you can fund a corporation with like 10% of our life expectancy.
Yeah. For sure.
Thanks, Judy.